Welcome to episode 29 of the Hard Truth About B2B e-commerce. I'm your co-host, Isaiah Bollinger, and I'm here with Tim.
Hi, I'm Timothy Peterson. It's great to be here, and we're recording this just between Christmas and New Year's, so we can't wait for 2021. I'm sure a lot of our listeners and viewers are thinking the same thing. And I just want to give a quick sponsor mention. We love Punch Out to Go. We thank them for all that they've done for us thus far. Punch Out to Go is a global B2B integration company specializing in connecting commerce business platforms with e-procurement and ERP applications. And Punch Out to Go's iPaaS technology seamlessly links business applications to automate the flow of purchasing data. I wish I had said that better. With their solution, you can immediately reduce integration complexities for Punch Out catalogs, electronic purchase orders, invoices, and other B2B sales order automation documents. So thanks, Punch Out to Go. And thanks, Isaiah. And now let's kick off this great edition for number 29.
Absolutely. Yeah. Season 2, actually, technically episode 10 of season 2. So,
yes,
which is exciting. You know, we're kind of expanding. And Francois, I think we'll get into some new topics here with your experience dealing with, there's a lot of ways to describe it, but I guess maybe the simplest way is like kind of procurement. You guys are kind of automating the process of getting products from overseas manufacturers and bringing them to the US in sort of an automated, almost like a B2B e-commerce platform fashion. So yeah, tell us a little, how did this even start, and what's your background? How did you get into this?
Thank you guys for having me and for seeing me in between Christmas and New Year's. I completely agree, Tim. 2021, that's the year to have a great time.
Here we go.
But no, it's a great question. So we are sort of in, I guess, a B2B e-commerce platform where we work with companies to help them procure all the products overseas with the purchasing, with the logistics, QC, really bringing their supply chain to scale with international sourcing. And whether that's a small mom and pop shop that just realizes, hey, I need to get on e-commerce and my 10 SKUs aren't cutting it. We have to have 50. Yeah. Or that's a larger enterprise business that just realizes that it's not the same, where you can't travel to China nowadays as easily as you were able to even last year. It's a lot of overhead when you have to send someone over there and meet new factories, and you have to vet them, and you have to work with companies like SGS to obviously audit them properly. And so we help those businesses also procure any of the products that they're looking for. And we act as their supplier and their partner throughout the entire process.
And so you do some of that then, right? Like, so you guys do some vetting of these manufacturers, and I assume like not anyone is on your platform, right? Like,
right. So, I mean, with, to put it to scale, we have about 4,000 factories, a little bit over 4,000 factories in our network. And that seems like a lot, but there's over 1 million in China. So,
wow.
So it's a very small portion, but it's because it does take a long time to actually vet them. It takes a lot of work to find out their backgrounds, what type of machinery they use, who they sell to, who they've been audited by in the past, and then bring that into a more of a layman term for any business that's looking to work with them.
And you probably don't want all 1 million, right?
We don't.
No, I don't think you do.
No, I mean, hopefully, when we expand to more countries outside of China, that is going to be one of our goals, just build this network out as vast as possible. But also not just let it be an open marketplace where we've seen, I don't want to mention any names, but much larger names out there that have kind of let it be a very pay-to-play model, almost like a Craigslist for manufacturing, I guess is one way to look at it.
So let me just ask a couple very general things, because, I was digging in a little bit, and I think you're in a great space. I mean, I've worked with a lot of companies before that are trying to source either entire products and get them manufactured overseas, or components of products, like a grommet or a carabiner, or all these sorts of things. Right. And I've worked with people in apparel, in fashion accessories, and home goods. So in these thousands of factories you work with, are they across the board, all different kinds of categories? I mean, give us a little bit of sense of that. I just want to make sure I understand that.
Yeah, and definitely, for CEOs listening, I'm not going to get into too much proprietary stuff, but we did look at a lot of the categories that are, I guess, very large in e-commerce. So whether that's home goods, whether that is, baby products, which is a booming category in Amazon.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We don't touch too much on supplements or any consumables, because that is a little bit more complex in regards to, if you need a cold supply chain for pulp, let's say coming from Mexico, that's a lot different than if you're trying to source mugs or if you're trying to source hardware.
Mm-hmm.
So we cover the majority of what you would find on Amazon, except for the high-end technologies and the consumables.
Makes sense.
And one quick follow-up on that. So you said, I just want to make sure that I understand this as well. So you're in Asia, China, and Vietnam. Is that right at this point? Or?
Yeah. So we have office in Ho Chi Minh, office in Shenzhen, office in Hangzhou. So 2 offices in China, 1 in Vietnam, 1 in Silicon Valley, 1 in Atlanta, and we have fulfillment centers throughout the U.S. also.
And do you offer various certifications that people are looking for, like about sustainability or about your trackability and all this sort of stuff? I mean, through the various folks that you work with.
And that's a very complex question that it can have a podcast by itself to have an answer.
It's just at the early stages, and it's so big. I talk with people about this stuff. And, a couple of years ago, nobody was really talking about this. And now they're doing it.
And so I guess to answer your question in short, yes, we are able to handle a lot of the tracking and the certifications. And one thing that sort of brought this to light was cabinetry. And so we supply a lot of major brands, great cabinetry coming from initially China and then coming from Vietnam after. But China was hit with anti-dumping duties and countervailing tariffs, skyrocketed to like 240, 250% of what the value would be. So a lot of it shifted to Vietnam, and the value of using us is that we are able to help them shift and move that supply chain easily. But what comes with that are things like the Lacey Act, right? Where you have to also understand where that wood is coming from. And a lot of the factories don't have this information digitized. So where traditionally a company would probably send a representative, help them gather all these documents together, and then work with, let's say, Benchmark or SGS or any of these other auditing companies, and then come up with sort of this compliance package where, okay, you have to keep a MSDS report at your, this piece of machinery, or this paint doesn't have any of the right documentation next to it that it should, or the label positioning even on the box doesn't have the right information. We gather all these requirements from our customers, and we work with the factory management and the engineers one-on-one to make sure that they are going to be able to comply with all this.
And, I just wanted to get into this at the beginning, because I have to say it's fascinating to me how quickly you have to get into the weeds with a lot of the clients I've worked with. I mean, even just, as you said, like MSDF, the manufacturer safety data sheets,
right.
These sorts of things. And it's great. I knew that you guys, got into the weeds with this. I just want to make sure our listeners knew that as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, MSDS is, I would consider even one of the basics. It's something that you have to have for the export and import requirements, specifically out of China. But it's something that was very, very heavily scrutinized, not MSDS. Yes, MSDS reports for sanitizer. And that's where, now we're seeing, I think it's over 100 brands that have been removed or taken off the shelves because they were using methyl or methanol alcohol, and it's something that is poisonous on your skin.
Yeah, I heard that.
I had a recall from BJ's. We bought, early on, we bought some hand sanitizer, just, one of the obvious things to buy when we were there. And then it got a thing in the mail. Luckily, we hadn't used it too much. We might have used it a couple times. So don't use it. We'll refund you. I was like, I'm just going to throw it away. I'm not going to go go online to get a $10 refund. I'm like, not worth it for me to get this. Wait for a check in the mail to come for.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so I mean, these are all important requirements to look into and to be compliant with, right? Whether that's with the FDA, whether that's with the EPA. So we help all of our customers find the right factories that are compliant, because someone that's selling in China might not necessarily be able to sell in the US just because of their product compliance.
Sure. Yeah. So it makes sense that a lot of this, would you say that a lot of what you guys are doing is really trying to kind of like simplify and automate the process, where right now it's very manual, or previously it was very manual, and you guys are kind of making it. So can you talk about how it's more automated? Like, let's say, we wanted to start using your platform and build a e-commerce site. Like, what does that look like? Like, what do I do?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I guess it's a two-part question. Yes, we are definitely trying to simplify the process, where a lot of businesses, particularly brick and mortar wholesalers and larger enterprise businesses, see the traditional way of faxing a PO even as just the only way to do it. I have to email it to them. I have to get a receipt back from them. And that's just how it's sort of trained into their mind. And they've been doing it for decades, which is perfectly fine. That is one way to do it. But now we're moving towards a more digital space, right? E-commerce itself is very virtual real estate. You can get as many products on there as possible. You don't have to worry about shelf space. Same thing for sourcing. When it comes to scaling up your sourcing, it's, okay, I have one person that's able to source 5 products in 2 months, because they have to vet every single supplier. They have to gather all the samples. They have to make sure they gather all the certifications. We do all of that for them in the platform. So you would come to us and let us know, hey, I'm trying to source, this mug with my own design on it, and it has to come in this sort of, consumer packaged good packaging. I would like the master cartons to be these sizes, dimensions, because it's best for fulfillment or cross-docking distribution. And from there, we take that project on. We say, okay, what's the budget? What's the target pricing? Are there any? If it's a plastic product, does it have to be BPA free? Do you have to have certain certifications for it? We'll look at the export licensing issues. If there's anything that has to do with on the China side, particularly with sanitizer now. Again, another entire topic for a podcast, I think. But we take all these requirements and we simplify it for them to where they don't have to check off every box. We do it for them, and we present them with a factory saying, this is the pricing. You can take a look at obviously all the samples. We can coordinate all the logistics immediately. As soon as they put in some of their warehouse destinations, they will see the import duties. They will see the shipping and logistics costs that are involved with it, the QC reports when production is done, and all of this in one central place, instead of doing WeChat, instead of doing WhatsApp, instead of doing email, and so much time is lost just through those small tedious tasks. That we can help just streamline that process. If we can improve a business's supply chain by 10%, they could be saving millions of dollars. And at the same time scaling up more products.
So they're getting more products and saving money, and then they bring this product data, these products onto their website. So
exactly,
how far do you go with that? I mean, that's obviously, that's part of what Trellis does, and there's a lot that goes into that. But are you guys actually helping them get some of that product data onto their website, or is that kind of on them? Like, hey, we source the products for you, but you gotta, like, it's not our job to, build your website, obviously.
I would leave it to Trellis to help them get it on their website. We very much help them with any information that might be useful for them for any marketing purposes, for Amazon.
Help them with that, then. You do.
So we can help them with the information, but in regards to putting it together and, let's say, making a listing or determining what the pallet quantities are, that's all on them. It's just, if they need a certification, let's say, to get approved by Amazon Business, then we can help them get that. Gotcha.
What about any of the sourcing the product data from these manufacturers? Like, do they have any data to give you, like, hey, this is the size and the stats about the product, or is that all in those safety data sheets, basically?
So, and there's only particular products that have safety data sheets. Not every product, like a mug, wouldn't come with a safety data sheet. But we help them, I guess, also get those dimensions. If that's something that they we need to do it regardless, because we have to take care of the logistics, take care of the volumes and the weights, and obviously is this going to be safe to ship, and how are they going to sell it? So is it going into a warehouse and then directly onto the shelves, or is it going through e-commerce? That's an entirely different way of packaging the item.
Yeah.
Right? Is it going into Amazon, or is it going into your own warehouse? Now you have to worry about different labeling. All these issues are sometimes missteps by major corporations that don't realize I'm losing a lot of money because Amazon is charging me 50 cents for every label that I missed. So we can help them cash that at the source.
Wow. No, that's really good to know. Yeah, I think it sounds like a lot of people could benefit from this.
Hopefully. That's the goal.
So I don't want to name these. I didn't ask permission, so I'm not going to name some of the e-commerce folks I've been working with. But I'll give you a couple scenarios and just see how this would work with you versus other methods. So, for example, somebody I'm working with they manufacture belts. They get belts manufactured, men and women, leather, non-leather buckles. Some of them are straps that get attached to bags, all that sort of thing. And they're always looking for components. And their method is usually to go out to AliExpress, I guess, or whichever one of the sites. And they're getting, by the thousand, and they're looking for the chrome versus the bronze. And they see the dates that it's like 6 months from now, it's getting put on the boat. And, so I think the question I would ask, like on behalf of maybe these smaller to medium-sized businesses that I'm working with, is do they get to a better position by working with you? So they're not like out in the marketplace and they see I have to order 1,000 and I order it now and then I get it in May. Like, is it a better deal to work with you to go around and get to the same manufacturer?
Well, I think it's different because some of the sites I think that you have in mind are AliExpress, Alibaba, 1688, DHgate, any of those very basic Chinese marketplaces. But that's exactly what they are. They're a marketplace, and it's open to any supplier. Anyone can go on there. I had a webinar 3 years back when we first tried to do the webinar thing, and I just, out of experimentation, I said, how long does it even take to be a supplier on Alibaba? It took me 10 minutes.
Yeah, I know.
Live on the website.
I set it up myself. I still have an account just because I wanted to say.
That's why there's lots of that's why you hear all these things that like 20% of the products are like fraudulent products, like lipstick made out of dust or something like that. Like,
well, you have that, and then Tim, I'm sure you experienced the same thing. I think it was a third step. Because there's only 3 pages you really had to go through. On the third step, they prompted you if you wanted to become an Alibaba Gold verified supplier. And it was like, just pay $3,000 and it'll happen in the next 2 weeks. And that got me thinking that is the most ridiculous thing, because so many businesses see that, and they see that as a trusted source. They see that as, okay, they're verified, they're Gold. Right. But it is very much, and this is why I say it's very much like a Craigslist where anyone can go on, but it's more of a pay to play model than anything. If you can do enough transactions, if you can have enough people just check out through your store, but you're selling them offline, there's so many different ways that you can actually buff up these numbers on these marketplaces. We mitigate all of that risk. And another issue with it is a lot of the times they do lack that sort of Western customer service mindset, right? Where if something goes wrong, their immediate thought isn't, okay, how can we fix this? Or, okay, let me hop on a quick phone call with them. It's, I didn't do anything wrong. That's on you. I just did, what you told me to. You told me you wanted something yellow. You didn't tell me you wanted Pantone, 7764F or whatever it may be. So we pry this information sometimes out of the businesses to make sure that we are getting the right product. There's no clickbait pricing. So on AliExpress or any of those other sites, you're going to be going through, MOQ1 starting at 20 cents. And then you start talking to them. 3 weeks down the road, it's 60 cents all of a sudden. And the MOQ is half a container. Right.
You buy 10 million, we'll give it to you for 20 cents. But otherwise, it's like $5,
Right. So we're very upfront. And this is why, I'm very proud of what we're able to do here. And we're able to bridge these gaps for that B2B experience to where businesses, again, traditional brick and mortar businesses could move online. They could expand the product lines a lot simpler and a lot safer to where they didn't have to before.
And so how do people, do they just go to the website? Is it, like are most people just signing up for the freemium model, or are they talking to you first, or?
Yeah, so and just to walk through that process, we do run on a freemium model. The platform is completely open. You just go to noviland.com, set up an account, immediately start putting in your requests, all your project details, budget, target pricing, specifications, packaging information, key quality indicators, everything that's pertinent to sourcing that product. Or if it's for logistics, then they just enter in all the logistics information, or if they want fulfillment, we have a separate site for that. But the process goes, they sign up. As soon as they sign up, they can submit the information. We hop on a phone call. I talk to every single one of our users that signs up. Now that can be a quick 10-minute phone call because they know their stuff and they just know exactly what they want. They just say, hey, give me a price, which is very traditional for larger businesses. Mm-hmm. For those small to medium sized businesses, sometimes they need a little bit more expectation setting or education, I would say, into their project itself, to where maybe traditionally they were selling, again, let's go with the example of mugs, but now they want to go into mug warmers, right? The little electric plates that go under the mugs. Now what they need to understand is that they need a UL certification to sell on certain platforms. They may need a CE certification. They need the right voltage to be put in, to be put out. It goes a little bit deeper into the manufacturer's warranty. All this information is something that we can talk to them about. So I tell them, and if they want to make a customization, which a lot of businesses think is very simple and easy to do. In reality, when you translate that to manufacturing, it's one of the hardest and most complex things that you could possibly do. Even adding a little piece onto a mug, that itself is a manufacturing process. So I have to educate them sometimes, which is perfectly fine. And those can be 2-hour long conversations, which I think are the most exciting conversations. But that's sort of the process. From there, we have an entire team. We've sort of broken it out into specialties, which is another thing that traditional supply chain lacks. Typically, you would work with, let's say, a sourcing agent, and that sourcing agent, now they wear a factory vetting hat. They wear a logistics hat. They wear a QC hat. They wear export and import licensing hat. So sort of that customs clearance. We have experts every step of the way. So we have a product specialist that interacts for the product development. We have the order managers. They oversee shipping and logistics. QC inspectors obviously do QC. Fulfillment specialists that handle our 3PL fulfillment side. And so having an entire team that works with you, where everyone's an expert in their respective fields, just makes a project go more streamlined. And you're no longer waiting on that one human resource to do all of the work for you. Now you have, it's a very much collaborative team effort.
Gotcha. Well, that makes a lot of sense. So actually this goes into like kind of the perfect topic that I think is still the crux of a lot of the problems in B2B e-commerce. And Tim, I'm curious to hear your thoughts here, but you think about what he's saying, Francois is saying, there's a lot of hand holding in the process. Even though it's like an automated system, there's still a lot of like thoughtful hand holding, which I think that's what I think B2B companies don't really truly understand. They're like, oh, if I build my B2B e-commerce site, what do my salespeople do? Like, do they just sit around and like, or do we have to fire all our salespeople and then they're all scared? Like, well, we don't want to build this thing because we have to fire. Like, no, you're just building a better tool for your customers so that your people can spend more time on the value add. And I think it sounds like you guys are doing a great job of that. So I just kind of want to hear your thoughts on that, because I think that's a common problem culturally with most B2B companies is, like you said, they're so stuck in the PO call, that kind of mindset, that the idea of putting all their stuff online to sell to their business customers, like it's hard to wrap their mind around how do they transform to that, right? So,
well, not only that, I think a lot of times they see it as something scary or somewhat unnecessary. If it's not a problem right now, I don't need to fix it. So it's something right? that does require a lot of education.
Yeah. So I was going to say also,
or cost.
Costs a lot. Like I mean, I'm sure your guys' platform wasn't cheap to build, right? Like, sometimes we quote people $300,000 for the project that they're looking for. So like to them, it's like, well, why am I going to pay you $300,000 for this thing that they don't even like understand how it's going to,
right,
really help them?
That's where the education comes into play. But like you said, it is a lot of hand holding, and it is not. We are not a. I guess to put it lightly, we're not a platform. We're a service company. I think every B2B company needs to remember that you are not just a platform. That platform is just a tool, and that it's just a tool for your, let's say your salespeople, or your engineers, or your customer service representatives to interact with the other businesses. And that's all it is. It's to make their lives, the businesses, your customers' lives easier, and all of your employees' lives easier. So we automate a lot of the communications. We automate a lot of the, let's say, the reminders of, hey, we need to check in with XYZ factory, and we need to make sure that the shipping and all the documentation is digitized and it's put into our system. Mm-hmm. So we automate a lot of the very tedious steps in the tool. And it's a fairly simple front end tool, but the back end is so robust that in our first version, it sometimes took 30 minutes to try to do one task. But once you have that tool, you keep building on that, right? You keep improving it. You keep saying, okay, what do my employees need that will make their lives easier, which in turn makes our clients' lives easier. And so we just keep doing that through feature improvements and through has to be the one-on-one interactions every single time, customer feedback.
No, I mean, this is, and I'm glad that Isaiah brought it up in this way too, because some of the conversations I've had with, with folks kind of struggling at some sort of middle stage, like they know that they want to be more advanced, like people use that word a lot. They want to be more advanced, right? They want to get further ahead somewhere with tech and tools and digitization and transformation, or whatever terms they want to use. But then they're not quite seeing exactly how that works in real time and in real life. And one of the things that I've come back to is saying, well, just think of even not too long ago when you had an actual spreadsheet as opposed to a spreadsheet program and then an automation of the program. It's like, you really just got to think of it that way, that, we're saving time, but then people are doing other things with that time. Right. And the value add is really, as you said, it's like working with the service, so you can actually get in the great conversations and move businesses ahead for people. You're taking advantage of great technology and saving time to do other great things.
Yeah.
Well, and I think 5 years ago, when we were first sort of testing how are we going to build this software and who's this going to be for, a big proponent of what we were trying to do is get into the minds of who's going to use it the most. And someone that's going to be using it more than anything are merchandisers and purchasing managers, mm-hmm. right? Because they have to try to source new products based on whatever their sales and marketing teams need. And one roadblock I think that a lot of companies have is that these positions, let's say I'm talking to a purchasing manager at a wholesaler, they might not see it as a tool to advance. They might see it as a tool of, this is more work for me. Now I have to get trained into it. Or how is this tool not replacing my job, because now I can source, they could source the products directly from overseas and I don't have to try to vet every supplier, or I don't have to build every relationship. And I think it just takes a few uses from those purchasing managers to use our platform and see, holy crap, now I can actually take my lunch, full hour lunch if I wanted to, or I don't have to be up at 1 a.m. worried about, is this product going to arrive at a warehouse, because I just got an email notification from Noviland an hour ago letting me know that this, it's going to arrive at certain hours. And so I think with any technology integration for any company, I think it has to come from the higher ups, and it has to be educating everyone that and empowering them to be able to use new tools, to be able to explore and bring up how they can use those new tools, and to open up, just like you said, to open up more time to do new things. Let's say that's
it's all about time, right?
It is.
Yeah, we're saving time. And I think I love that you bring up that. I mean, that's why we're doing this podcast, right? Like we're trying to educate a market where, like, if you try and learn about B2B e-commerce, it's hard, right? Like, where do you go? Like, there's lots of podcasts for like Shopify or basic stuff, but not a lot for B2B e-commerce. And I think you're bringing up a lot of good points. So I guess I mean, I think the way I like to describe this, and I want to hear your take, the B2B companies I think they're fairly used to ERP systems. Do you agree with that? Like most B2B companies are used to like a NetSuite, or, you know, they might have a legacy system, but most of them can wrap their head around that, right? Like they understand, I need this system to put in my inventory. And that was all very behind the scenes. And I think what they're having a hard time wrapping their head around is you need to take that and bring that online for the customer, which is essentially e-commerce, so that all the same things you're doing behind the scenes, customer has more transparency into what's going on. It's more automated through e-commerce. The problem is those ERP systems usually aren't very good for e-commerce. Like
they're not friendly.
They're not e-commerce. I mean, there are a few that are like ERP systems that might have e-commerce, but generally they're not very competitive for the e-commerce. Then you need a new platform like Magento or, you know, BigCommerce, or, you know, there's some that are more B2B focused than obviously like the Shopify, which is a little more B2C focused. And then it's like, then they just have a hard time wrapping their head around, well, now I got to invest all this money into this thing, integrated it into the back office. And it's like this whole new big world that frankly can get expensive because, you know, developers aren't cheap. You need to design it and build it. Like ERP doesn't have to be designed, right? It's just like, it is what it is. Like it's just data, right? But like you have to design the front end and build it and integrate. Like there's so many more steps, and get all your product data. Like they could have ERP data where it's just like SKU, price, blah blah blah. But it's like you can't do that with e-commerce. You need like 50 things to sell the product. Like at least a description, you know, a lot more than just SKU and price, right?
Right. I mean, pricing tiers even with different quantities and how you're going to palletize them. I mean, these are all very important pieces that a business has to think about if they're doing more of that B2B e-commerce.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm asking you is like, how would you help I know this isn't necessarily what you do, but obviously it helps you kind of if they got better at this stuff, right? Because then hopefully they use more of your product to sell more online. What advice would you give for someone, seeing as in some ways you've already done some of this, to, you know, either starting from scratch or maybe they have something that's just not doing much? Like where would they start? Where should they start or put their attention into? Because I think that's part of the problem too, is there's too many things to do at once, you know, and do everything at once.
And I think it is going to require more interdepartmental cooperation. So whether that's sales and marketing and the purchasing side and the engineers that are, let's say, you know, creating the CAD files for the products, I think it requires every step of the process. So the marketing, for example, bringing in all the listing information, the sales side bringing in all the different pricing and what different price points they can get at, the purchasing, understanding more the dimensional aspects and, you know, how this can be palletized and, you know, what sort of warehousing they actually need for the product. How quickly the product's going to move, different types of forecasts, because these are all important aspects in e-commerce, right? It's not, again, it's not just worrying about the shelf space, it's worrying about all the back-end solutions that you could implement, again, across all the departments. So I think bringing together all those departments and not just having one department sort of handle it. A lot of times I see companies just have their marketing handle it, but their marketing has no idea anything about the product design or the packaging or, you know, I've seen this, right, any of the logistics, any of that. So I think bringing together all the departments is key. Because I've seen this personally. I've seen a business switch from a small mom and pop brick and mortar of selling, I think it was coffee mugs or some sort of glassware, shifted to e-commerce, and where traditionally they would just put these on the shelves and people would pull them off and buy them. Now they're putting them in little boxes, but they didn't think about, hey, this probably needs styrofoam because they're not going to gently put it on the conveyor belt. They're not going to gently put it in front of the door, right? And so I think that's why it does require having the engineers, and it requires having the sales and marketing and every sort of facet before you expand into e-commerce.
I think that's a really good point. Yeah, like before you even start building the site, get everyone on the same page. Don't like I think what happens like, hey, you know, Todd or whatever the guy's name is. What I find it's either the IT guy who runs the ERP or it's the marketing guy. One of those two people, and it's their job to go build this whole new sophisticated e-commerce platform, and they don't even really have the power to do everything they need to do because they're only one little small department in the company. And they can only get
and it delays the entire project.
My marketing budget, I can get you 50 grand for this little piece, and it's like it's just not enough to get all the things that they need to do.
Well, so let me see if this makes sense. So I can think of three categories of different stages of businesses then that could really benefit from the kinds of things that you're up to, right? So one would clearly be the novice, the early stage, so the younger. Let's again, I'll use a real example without naming them, but a company I'm talking to, there's a fashion designer. They're coming up with all sorts of great things. They've never manufactured things. They've only made some things couture or custom themselves. They've never gotten things made in bulk. So they can come to you and kind of figure this all out. Or it could be, kind of the medium-sized one where it's like, we don't like our relationships, or we've never figured out exactly where the better places are, or, we need to kind of move up in the ranks and get expert, opinions and efficiencies figured out and logistics, better. Or there really is the one where they are pretty great at what they're doing, but maybe they are looking to get more advice to add, to get expert advice to do new things. So I could see really all of those, working with you guys and just doing well. And I hope I'm right.
100% right. That's why it's so hard to market. Again, it's one of those things where if it's not seen as an immediate problem, you don't need an immediate solution. So for those sort of novice level, they don't see the benefit in having someone do it for them because they think, I'm just going to find a manufacturer. They're going to make exactly what I want. For that middle component, it's, hey, I have 10 SKUs. I'm happy with it. Don't need to expand too much. I'm happy with my sales. They don't see, hey, I want to scale up, or I want 100 SKUs by next year. How am I going to do that effectively? And there's larger ones. They just see it as, hey, I have the resources to be able to find those factories regardless. But now we have to manage all the relationships with them. We have to oversee the QC for it.
Sure.
We have to see logistics. And so we do provide benefit every step of the way. But that's really where e-commerce is bringing the entire ecosystem, right? In the retail space, it's bringing it to sort of this relationship building through technology, and that's what we're trying to do here.
So one more question that just was in the back of my mind this whole time. So I know you have, you've been around for, what do you say, 5 years or so? Is that right? And you have these great, vetted places in Asia. What about the growth of factories in North Africa in particular? I know a lot of people working there, Eastern Europe, India, or North and South America. Have you thought about any of those places or new relationships in the next 5-10 years, let's say, for you guys?
100%. Yes, we're definitely looking at every other country. I mean, for example, for just cabinetry alone, switching that over from China to let's say Malaysia and to Vietnam, you have to understand the supply chains for each one of those countries to see how it's going to work. And so that's something that we're looking into. The one thing that we really, really, really want to get down first is perfect the process and be able to make that repeatable to every other country. So it's not saying that any of our customers are guinea pigs because we're very good at what we do. But in order to translate a Chinese supply chain to Vietnam, you have to have everything in line that's absolutely perfect. So you can set up an office and immediately start onboarding factories.
Yeah.
Same thing with India. Very much agree with South America, booming, let's say Brazil, Mexico, North Africa. We're seeing a lot of investments from Asia into North Africa also.
Exactly. I've seen so much of that in the last year or so.
Yeah, well, the Belt and Road Initiative is a... Oh, go ahead, Isaiah.
I was going to say, like you said, you want to expand too fast where all of a sudden, you guys would probably spread too thin if you had an office in every country and every...
I mean, we have businesses around the world, whether it's France, Germany, UK, Australia, Canada, Mexico, Venezuela, France. I mean, it's really once we opened the platform up back in 2018, we saw it wasn't a US problem, it's a global problem. And it just takes a few early adopters to really see the value in streamlining and simplifying their supply chain so they can continue growing instead of managing, right? Because that's all companies really doing. They're just managing their relationships and managing their SKUs.
Let me add one more to that, Tim. What about the U.S. manufacturers selling to Asia, and what about going the other way?
Great question. Great question.
Here you go. I assume that's got to be on your guys' roadmap as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, we're looking at global manufacturing. It's not just manufacturing in China. It's not just manufacturing in Asia. Even it's really a global manufacturing where every country has its own pros and their cons, right? Just to keep it simple, India is really good at low MOQs and very detail-oriented small trinkets and textiles.
What's MOQ? I know what it is, but what is it?
Oh, minimum order quantity.
Thank you. I just want to make sure people all hear it.
So they're very good at smaller, like if you wanted 5 or 10 instead of like 1,000, they're very good at that.
Right, and handmade goods. Whereas in China, it's, the labor costs are going up. They need to start automating a lot of their processes, so their MOQs, their minimum order quantities, are going to start to go up also, because they want to keep that pricing competitive with India, with Vietnam, and all these other countries. So it's not just looking at Asia. I think every business should look at other countries and diversify their supply chain. That's what we're really going to try to bring to the table in the next 5 to 10 years also.
It makes sense that every country would have certain things they're good at. The US is obviously very good at assembling these like high-tech goods, like Apple and Tesla, and I'm sure there's many, many more examples. So, every country is probably good at something. South America, I'm sure, is probably one of the best at coffee, right? I think. Or
Well, I mean, stucco, for example. Mexico is very good at stucco and construction. They always need it. And so they're not going to source it from China because the logistics costs are just way too high. So they're going to go to Mexico to try to get this because it's cheaper than the US and transport it up to the project site. It's looking at all these very small things, but so many different industries.
That's so interesting too, because if you take a global view of this, I mean, obviously getting something from China to the US is pretty expensive, but if there's something slightly more expensive in Mexico, that might actually be cheaper to get it to here in the US because you're so close. So even if you're paying a tiny bit more, it might be cheaper with the shipping. I'm sure you guys can solve that, right?
That's why we're trying to be more of a supply chain solution on that global scale. We're still very young. We're growing up. Hopefully, again, in the next 5 to 10 years, just like Tim said, we are going to be able to expand into more countries and really open this up to more businesses.
So have you worked, again, this is just something I know from folks I've worked with, but have you worked with all of the state governmental, like nonprofit manufacturing associations in the US to help businesses find, the right sources around the world to get their products made?
Not yet. So, when we first started out, we very much started out as just an agency. We didn't have the platform. We were helping businesses source mostly building materials from overseas. We were trying to, just like every company, trying to find a way to monetize this. And then once we opened up the platform, that sort of just splurged into all e-commerce businesses seeing this as almost a necessity for their supply chain rather than a want. The non-governmental, or I guess the governmental, the ones that need sort of I think you have to go through the SAM application, and you have to have your DNB, and it's a very long process to supply them. We did look into it. It's something that we are able to do, but we didn't see the most benefit in doing that at this time. I think down the road, we very much want to, and particularly when it came to PPE. For example, we were working with government agencies to help them source from overseas, and we were working with hospitals, for example, to try to get them PPE that they very much needed this year. But opening that up, we want to focus on what we can right now, which is helping for-profit businesses start to get their supply chain more digitized, more streamlined, simpler, as Isaiah said. And then work our way into those non-for-profits.
Yeah, those are, it's really, the reason I'm bringing it up is it's very, very particular to people who are either trying to manufacture themselves or trying to source things from around the world, but they're usually getting some funding from governments. And so they have to go through these particular pathways. So for example, there's an organization called ITAC that I know. And again, it's a nonprofit. It's based in New York, but there are organizations in every state in the country, all major cities, that have these kinds of things where they're trying to help smaller businesses figure stuff out. And it's a very complicated path for a lot of them. So, you know, just one of those things where I've been in the middle of that. And it's a very weird sort of thing where you try to break them out and consult and say, well, wait a minute, we have people here who can help you, but you know, they're following a different path.
Right. No, it's definitely something we can look into, actually. Thank you for, we'll have to get you a commission on that, Tim.
Absolutely. I'm available. Happy to chat anytime.
I might just want to check out the platform to just start messing around and buy some products. You know, I've always been like, you know, why not?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
We're gonna do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun stuff. It's as long as you put the time and effort into the sourcing, it can be very lucrative. And I've seen businesses start from a $2,000 investment, now placing every single order being $20,000, and they're doing that on a quarterly basis. I love seeing that. I mean, that's a very much a B2B relationship that I was able to help build, and a bridge that we were able to help fill also. It's exciting stuff. It's something where we are trying to not reinvent supply chain, but make businesses realize that it doesn't have to be done in this traditional PO, email, WeChat form. It could be done through more technology and sort of have this white glove done for you service.
Do you have a fax number? Can I fax you?
Unfortunately, we do not have a fax machine even. I can find my local Kinko's and I'll get their fax number.
There you go.
So you're making it more advanced, right, Tim?
Yeah, more advanced.
Making things more advanced.
I'm notching it up level by level.
More advanced, but simpler.
That's the thing. It's funny because people think, oh, it's so complicated and advanced. A lot of times you're just making it simpler. By making things more advanced, you're really just making it easier for people.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, would you consider Microsoft Word more advanced than writing on paper? Yeah, definitely. But it also makes your life 10 times simpler. You don't have to write pen and paper anymore.
We're about simplifying commerce. Is that right, Isaiah?
Yeah. Thank you, Tim. Tim helped us kind of simplify our messaging, which we now make commerce simple at Trellis. So, we've covered a lot of good stuff. I just want to kind of give you one last opportunity to kind of maybe, what do you see coming down the road, or, you know, in this B2B space now that you've been doing this for 5 years? You know, where do you see B2B going in terms of, you know, technology and, you know, in relation to e-commerce?
Well, I think everything is going to start to be centralized around e-commerce. And I think every company, if they're not going to get into e-commerce themselves, they're ultimately going to fail. I can see smaller businesses not succeeding by not transitioning onto e-commerce platforms. And I think they do need to, you know, get all their teams together and really have a conversation about, is this the right move? Because, I mean, you're no longer competing against the guy down the street. Now you're competing against a global scale e-commerce world, right? You can be competing with someone in China for the exact same products as you nowadays, but they're selling it for cheaper. So now it's how do you
online? I can just go online and buy it, you know?
Right. I mean, even through, you know, just taking let's say Alibaba listing, putting it on your Shopify store and just selling it for more than what you see it on Alibaba for. Just a simple drop shipping model. So I think the world is becoming more competitive, and if you don't transition into this e-commerce space sooner rather than later, it is going to make your business suffer. And we are talking to a lot of our more brick and mortar traditional customers to do that and help them get into sites like, you know, Build.com or Home Depot or Walmart or Wayfair, and help them with the fulfillment, help them with the distribution, help them with the labeling requirements. So I think moving to e-commerce is 100% the path moving forward, and what everyone should sort of look around. I mean, my girlfriend just ordered, I think, 15 different shirts. She's going to return 10 of them for free.
Oh yeah, don't get started. Don't get me started.
So I think, I mean, it's going to shift to where we're going to start to see more returns. We're going to start to see packaging costs maybe go on the rise because there's more packaging required with it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of things that are going to be centralized again around this e-commerce space, and it's going to open a lot of new opportunities. So we're just excited to be a part of it.
Tim, I think you were going to say something. Or maybe
No,
you're
I was
so excited that you're just like, I'm so.
I'm like this. I'm just blown away by it all. No, I think you see me shaking my head a lot. And that's because I really am, in the same mindset as you, Francois. I really just thinking about all of these things and the progress, and exactly where things are going. And, the one other thing I would say that's kind of amusing, and I'm watching this very carefully, is to see where returns really go. This whole explosion in e-commerce B2C, but also B2B for a lot of reasons in this past, 9 months, year. Now with the kind of the return processes changing, one thing I've talked to people about is no package returns and the growth of returns where people just bring the product to various locations to scan and be done with it, because you don't have to go to UPS with a box anymore for an Amazon return, right? So these kinds of things that are starting to happen, they're going to be moving into the B2B world specifically, and just trying to figure out how to cope with all that.
No, that is going to be very interesting, and I think that itself, since there isn't a solution, we're going to see a big opportunity, right, for a lot of businesses to expand into that sort of return world, maybe a new wholesale return market where you just get a bunch of return items for different B2B businesses, and that turns into B2C products.
I actually already know someone doing that, so I won't disclose who it is, but
that's almost like an overstock.
Yeah, we're in the process of working with the company that does that, and I can tell you they're very successful. Kind of exactly what you're talking about.
Oh yeah,
there's a lot of these extra overstock items that there's a lot of extra inventory in certain niches that people want to liquidate, and there's a market there. But yeah, so I totally agree with you. I hate the idea of fear mongering, but at the same time, I think it's important for B2B companies, especially, to realize, you know how you hear the retail apocalypse? I really do think there's the B2B apocalypse coming. And it's like, we already saw it. We already saw the retail apocalypse. Like,
we talked about it here.
Don't let it happen again to you if you're a B2B company, just because you don't want to change. Like, it's painful for me to see this coming and then see so many companies not doing anything about it, because we see it coming. You're not the only one. You're not the only guest that said that. I think it was, oh man, I forget which guest it was.
Yeah, actually, I think it was even more than one. I remember this now when I'm thinking back on all of our episodes.
Yeah, so I don't think it's a coincidence. It's not like you guys are all talking to each other about the B2B apocalypse. Everyone's seeing this coming. So, do something, get started. But I like the idea of, like, hey, get all your departments together, have a conversation, start there. That's step one.
It's simple. It's simple. And it could really just be a 1 hour conversation about, hey, should we do this and how can we do this? What resources do we need to pull together to make this happen? Because if you're not going to do it, someone else is.
Yeah. And start small. All right.
Well, here's to 2021.
Yes. Let's have a great 2020.
Exactly.
Let's avoid the B2B apocalypse. If people need help,
avoid the B2B apocalypse.
They can contact you. They can contact us. They can contact Punch Out to Go. There's people here that can help you avoid the next.
Yeah,
we're here for you. We're here for you, listeners. We're here for you.
Well, thank you
very
so
much.
We'll definitely have to have you back when you're in 10 more countries. How about that? How about once you get to a few more countries, we'll bring you back on. You can teach us.
I love it. I'll keep you guys in the loop as soon as we expand it to the next country, even, and we'll go from there. We'll see how that supply chain shifted.
Thank you so much.
Really a pleasure. This has been great.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.